Hey everybody, welcome back. This episode we are going to create a login and registration system using AWS Amplify CLI. So there's a couple of different ways you could call a login or registration system. You can call it an authentication system, auth for short. Using AWS, the services in particular that are going to be implemented are AWS Cognito, which creates the user pools, which are that's the list of actual users that you have, and that's the service that manages their passwords for them, as well as provisioning some access permissions for those users using AWS IAM, which stands for Identity and Access Management. So, but the Amplify CLI is an amazing tool. It's great for developers, and its mission is to drastically reduce the time involved in provisioning common AWS resources, as well as just making development a more enjoyable experience. So what we're going to do is we're going to integrate and onboard the Amplify CLI into the project, and we're going to follow along with their official documentation here on the right side. So we're going to want to go ahead and set up our backend and Amplify init. So it's using the Amplify npm module, which we're going to want to install that. We're going to want to install that globally. So let's see here. I just want to make sure that the name is correct. So we're going to want to npm install g aws-amplify /CLI. So let's go ahead and do that. -g aws amplify /CLI. Okay. And after that, what we're going to do is we're going to run amplify configure, and this is going to set up which AWS account is going to provision the resources through the Amplify CLI. So AWS uses something called CloudFormation to deploy its resources. CloudFormation is essentially it's almost like a templating language for the backend, meaning that it defines AWS resources like an S3 bucket or an API gateway or a Lambda function, and it defines that resource as a JSON or a YAML object. And when you run the push command, AWS CloudFormation will automatically try to create, provision, and deploy those AWS resources. So whenever you are trying to create an S3 bucket, under the hood, AWS is using CloudFormation to create that S3 bucket. And so this Amplify CLI is really just a abstraction on top of CloudFormation. It's something that lets CloudFormation be more flexible, and it addresses common workflows that front-end web and mobile developers have. So AWS Amplify isn't just used for web development, where it can be used with React, Angular, vanilla JavaScript. It can also be used with React Native, as well as native iOS and Android libraries to create common UI components. For example, it can be used to add cloud features to your application, such as provisioning S3 buckets for storage, creating a user pool, as we're about to do so now. It can be used to create serverless Lambda functions that will instantly deploy and function immediately. It's quite an amazing piece of technology, and we're going to be featuring it throughout this series as a way for us developers to improve our overall workflow and make developing faster and more of a joy. So we've gone ahead and finally installed the application. took us a quick little second there. So let's go ahead and run Amplify configure. So it's gonna want us to sign into our administrator account. Okay, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Press enter to continue. So what's the default region that we want all of these resources to be deployed to? Let's, for the sake of simplicity, use US East 1. Let's specify the IAM of our new user. What the heck, we'll just keep the default name there. And now, as you can see, it's auto-generating some things on the website. So we're going to give this Amplify user programmatic access for the AWS API CLI SDK. So we'll go ahead and do that. We're going to give it administrator access. No need for any tags. We'll go ahead and create the user. Now we've gone ahead and created that user. And now we need to go ahead and enter the access key. As well as the super secret access key. It just occurs to me that I'm showing you all my public and secret access keys, which is not really smart as a developer, but I'll go ahead and change those. I'll go ahead and change those before I publish these videos. Great, so we've gone ahead and successfully set up that new user. Excellent, good stuff. Now we can go ahead and continue with setting up Amplify here. So now that we've configured Amplify, we can go ahead and run the Amplify init command. And this is going to walk us through the workflow for setting up our new project. So enter a name for the project. Sure, we'll call it Pareto Training Web. Enter a name for the environment. I guess we'll go ahead and call this the prod environment. Our default text editor here is Visual Studio Code. We are building a JavaScript application. It automatically detected that we're using React. Very smart. That's the source directory path. That's right. That is also correct. Build command yarn. I believe the build command in this case is yarn. Well, let's quickly check what the command is here before we get too crazy here. React scripts build. So we'll go ahead, but yarn run build will also go ahead and do that there. Okay. What is, I think it's just yarn start. So do I want to use an AWS profile for this? I believe I do. We're going to go ahead and use the Pareto Amplify profile. Well, hold on. Do we want to use the Pareto Amplify profile? Is there a reason why we wouldn't want to use that profile? I'm wondering if that's going to come back and bite us later. You know what? Why don't we just go ahead and use the default? Well, this is the main Pareto account. So, well, then again, it's still going to be linked to the same account. It's just going to use that specific profile to create the resources. That's a good question. You know, we'll just go, well, I guess we'll run with Pareto Amplify. We'll go ahead and run that. So now AWS is going to actually provision the resources on CloudFormation. It's going to take a quick second here, but yeah, so it's going to be pretty nice. And we're going to see in a minute or so how Amplify actually functions. And the program that I think has the best comparison is Git. So now that our project has deployed here, it gave us some next steps. So Amplify Status will show you what you've already added and if it's locally configured or deployed. Amplify Category Add will allow you to add features like user login or a backend API. Amplify Push will build all your local backend resources and provision it in the cloud. Amplify Publish will build all your local backend and front-end resources and provision it in the cloud. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and check the Amplify status. So again, the application that I find closest to parallel this is GitHub. Is Git. And here, just like in Git, you run git status to see what is the status of the changes you have made to the code. And here in the same way, we're running Amplify status to see what are the pending changes. And right now, there are none because we don't actually have anything to show. So let's go ahead and let's see here. Let's go ahead and add, or actually, I guess let's just run Amplify and see what our options are here. So we have a couple of options here. We have Amplify init, which initializes a project, Amplify configure, which we've done, push, publish, serve. Okay. So we have Amplify status, we have Amplify delete. So this is kind of when, if we want to just remove everything, Amplify add, Amplify update. So this is where we've already added something to Amplify, but we want to update it, meaning like maybe we deployed a serverless REST API, and we want to update the code in it. This is what we would use. Category. Let's see what our. I think actually. Here we go. So these are our categories up here: analytics, API, auth, function, hosting, interactions, notifications, predictions, storage, etc. So these are the different things that we can add to our project using AWS Amplify. So what we're most concerned with right now is adding auth. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Amplify add auth. So it asks us, do we want to use the default configuration? Do we want to use a manual configuration? We can go ahead and run the manual configuration because we want to see what's going on here. So we have a couple options: user sign up, sign in connected with AWS IAM controls, per user storage features for images or other content, analytics, and more. User sign up and sign in only, best used with a cloud API only. We'll go ahead. We want to have some IAM controls here. So we're going to go ahead and select the first option. Please provide a friendly name for your resource that will be used to label. So this is like a really not a great friendly name. We'll just go ahead and call it Pareto auth here. So it doesn't want any dashes. Sure. Okay, please enter a friendly name for the identity pool, Pareto identity. Allow unauthenticated logins. Do we want to allow unauthenticated logins? That's a great question. I'd say, well, we have an option. I want to learn more. Let's see what this I want to learn more says. So if you select yes, your identity pool will provide temporary AWS credentials for unauthenticated users. We'll go ahead and say no for allowing unauthenticated logins. Do you want to enable third-party identification providers in your identity pool? Well, let's click I want to learn more. If you select yes, your identity pool will support users who are authenticated via a public login provider such as Facebook, Google, Amazon. Your identity pool will continue to support users who are authenticated via user pool. I'm going to go ahead and say no for now. Please provide a name for your user pool. Cool. How do I want users to be able to sign in? Oh, this is so excellent. This has really improved since the last time I used it. This has really improved. In the past, it kind of was like a bug, I think, but they forced you to use the username attribute to sign up and log in. But now apparently we can just select email. Multi-factor authentication. Do we want to have this? I'm going to go ahead and say optional. Individual users can use MFA. For user login, select the MFA types. Right, and this is for user login. We'll go ahead and specify SMS. That's fine. Email-based user registration, forgot password. Requires per user email entry at registration. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. Please specify an email verification subject. Pareto registration code. Do you want to override the default password policy for this user pool? Well, what is the default password policy? Enter the minimum password length, 8 characters. Sounds pretty reasonable. Okay, so now we can select password character requirements for the user pool. We can press space, A, press space to select, A to toggle all, I to invert selection. So what do we want to do here? Do we want to require lowercase, require uppercase, require numbers, require symbols? Anything else here? The thing about smart passwords is it really doesn't matter whether you have lowercase, uppercase, numbers, or symbols. Really, the most important thing with passwords is, are they difficult to guess? So, for example, coming up with a long expression that would be very, very difficult for somebody to guess. Doesn't have to have numbers, doesn't have to have capital letters. It could be something as simple as the Seattle skyline is very beautiful. It could be all lowercase letters. And again, that password would be almost impossible to crack because the chances of a computer being able to guess that are so astronomically low that it would just frankly be impossible without quantum computing. So I'm kind of torn here. I kind of don't want to have any password character requirements, to be perfectly honest. So I'll just go ahead and press enter, and I'll give people the freedom to be able to make their own mistakes. Now, what attributes are required for signing up? Address, birth date, email. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the only thing that we really need for our purposes right now is email. Specify the app's refresh token expiration period. Yeah, 30 days seems about right. Do I want to specify the user attributes this app can read and write? No, because we don't really have any user attributes this app can read and write. Do I want to enable any of the following capabilities? Wow, they've really added some new features to this since I've last used it. No, I'm okay. Do I want to use an OAuth flow? Well, when you create a user pool in Amazon Cognito and configure a domain for it, Amazon Cognito automatically provisions a hosted web UI to let you add sign up and sign in pages to my app. So I already have some React components to manage the login process. So I don't really need this additional hosted web UI. So I'm just going to go ahead and say no. Do I want to configure Lambda triggers for Cognito? So what they're asking here is when my users are creating an account using Cognito, I can set up some AWS Lambda functions to automatically fire when a certain step in the Cognito registration flow has gone through. This is useful for certain things, like let's say that you want to be able to programmatically create an account for a user for them. Like you want them to have basically zero involvement in the account creation process. You want to be able to auto-generate their account, their credentials, everything. There's a handy trigger that makes that process a little smoother. But for what we're doing here, no, we don't need to configure any Lambda triggers right now. Okay, well there we go. So successfully added resource Pareto auth locally. So let's run Amplify Status again, and let's see what's going on here. And it says that here we have an auth category, Pareto auth operation create. So, and CloudFormation. So this operation create basically specifies what Amplify CLI wants to do. So let's go ahead and run Amplify push. And now the CLI is going to actually create and deploy the CloudFormation files that we need for everything to work. And so now it's going to go ahead and update those resources in the cloud. So, you know, go ahead and take a quick second to go get a cup of tea or something. Won't take that long though. I think it'd probably take about a minute. But essentially what we're going to do next is the Amplify CLI is going to automatically auto-generate a file called aws-exports.js. And what this file does is it has the information relating to the user pool and relating to any other resources that Amplify CLI automatically generates. And AWS Amplify has a function called configure that we can run inside of our React application. And instead of manually specifying every single API within the code, we can actually just plug in this AWS exports object as a parameter for amplify.configure. And that could theoretically, you know, save us a little bit of time and complexity. And it would also be beneficial in that, it would be beneficial in the fact that we don't have to have a config.js file when we could probably do without certain environment variables if we needed to hide this information from the outside world. But anyways, this stuff is being created, so so let's see. Right, so integration with the app, right? So we're importing config from AWS-exports, and we're doing configure, right? There we go. Okay. Let's actually API.configure. So this API.configure, I guess, is a separate. This is a separate configuration function for just declaring an API. What we're going to want to do, we're just going to do amplify.configure. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so this has finished. Now let's run Amplify Status again to check what the status is. And here, yeah, operation, no change, right? So now that this has been deployed, next time we run Amplify push, nothing's going to change. Seems pretty simple. Let's go ahead and check out that auto-generated AWS exports file. So AWS Cognito identity pool, AWS _Cognito region. Okay, all right. So there we go. so we got some stuff here. Now, so it's the export default is called AWS Mobile. So AWS Mobile is kind of the legacy of Amplify CLI. AWS Mobile was the predecessor to Amplify. It was a CLI-based toolchain that allowed you to automatically generate and deploy resources, AWS resources in mobile applications. And Amplify has kind of taken that philosophy and run with it. But essentially what we could do here in the index.js file here is what we've been doing is we've been manually using Amplify to configure our auth and an API endpoint, right? But now what we can do is we can simply say amplify.configure AWS Mobile. And all we have to do here is import AWS Mobile from AWS exports. Righto. Okay. So understandably it's gonna log me out, right? Now let's go ahead and let's go into AWS here, and let's go check out Cognito to see what's going on over here, to see what the actual user pool that we created looks like, right? Credo pool prod. Okay. Right. So right now we have an estimated number of users at 0. So in AWS Cognito, we can actually create our, we can actually go ahead and just create our users here. So why don't we go ahead and create credo.js@gmail.com. Temporary password. Sure, why don't we say I love Seattle. And we'll go ahead and see if that works. I must enter a phone number. Okay, and so my account status here is force change password. Okay, so burrito.js@gmail. Well, let's try to log in and see if that works for us. So burrito.js@gmail.com. It's probably not going to work. Well, I guess it did. All right, so so that's all working very beautifully, right? So this is how you go ahead and use the Amplify CLI to create a user login and registration system, and how to integrate it with a React front end. In the next video, we are going to cover creating the user profile CRUD API and deploying it through the serverless framework. And we're going to walk through, what the serverless framework is, how it's used, what do you need to set up to configure everything, and then we're also, of course, going to walk through what that CRUD API looks like in Node.js. We're going to walk through some of the concepts of Node.js that you would find helpful for understanding and for replicating such an API in your own project. Looking forward to it.